gentlemen, to Unfiltered Podcasts. Of course, you know who I am. My name is Jason Gaszak, pastor of Roots Church right here in St. Clair, Missouri. And guess what? We have been doing a podcast for a little over a year now. Before that, I was on the radio for a couple years, but this is a way that I can have a platform to talk about social, political, and biblical topics from a pastor's perspective and be unfiltered. So I'm just going to warn you. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a warning. There are going to be times where I'm going to get a little excited. I'm going to get a little passionate. I'm probably even going to get a little frustrated. I'm probably going to communicate things that might hurt your feelings or offend you, but just remember, it's called Unfiltered for a reason. I don't really have a lot of show notes. I have some topics that I want to talk about that I write down. I write down some things that I want to read that other people have said about topics that I want to share, but most of the things that I do is literally just speak from my heart, from my mind, from the thoughts that I may have about the things that are going on right now in our world. And I can just tell you right now, there is a lot of craziness going on in our world. But before I jump into those topics, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I don't do this very often, because I'm not much of being a self-promoter of the things that I do, because I just figured if you want to hear what I'm talking about, you're going to click subscribe and follow and like and love and comment and all those great things on your own. But as I'm trying to build this platform to get the word out, I am going to ask you to do me a favor. If this is your first time listening, or maybe you haven't subscribed yet to this YouTube channel, do me a favor right now, just click the button right below me that says subscribe. When you click the button, it's going to then email you every single time an episode goes live or we produce it in some way, shape, or form. It'll actually send you an email or a notification that a new episode is available for you to listen to. I'm going to ask you to share this information, get the word out to people, like my social media pages on. I don't do a lot of, I mainly am on Facebook and Instagram. I do some tweeting every once in a blue moon. A lot of the stuff's going to be the same things on each platform. But either way, I'm asking you to follow me, subscribe to this YouTube page, Unfiltered, and let's together create a platform that we can talk, share our thoughts and feelings about what's going on. And listen, if you don't like what I'm saying, it's okay. Comment on there. Tell me what you don't like. Let's have a conversation as much as we can about the topics that I'm bringing up. But today, I want to talk to you a little bit about a lot. All right? I'm going to spend the next 20 or 30 minutes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today, but I do want to just try to make us aware of a lot of things that are going on in our country. It's been a little over a week since the attempted assassination of former President Trump. I want to talk briefly just a little bit about that. It's been just a few days since, since Sunday when President Biden actually told the world through a letter on Twitter that he was no longer going to run for the next election and he would be stepping down basically after the end of his term. It had been 4 or 5 days since we'd even seen him or heard from him. And finally, Wednesday of this past week, he finally addressed the country and put his full support with Kamala Harris. Kamala, however you want to pronounce her name. I know there's this big controversy on how her name's pronounced, but you know who she is. You know, the evil witch from the Wicked West is how I would describe her. And I know that sounds awful, but I'm going to tell you guys, this lady is not for our future at all. She is not for the next generation. I'm going to read you some things about her here in just a few minutes of her political stance from her past and what she's really about, okay? And then we're going to talk a little bit, I guess, about just some change that is taking place or what change even looks like. So I hope you stay with me through the next 20, 30 minutes. Let's first start by talking about the assassination. You're probably sick and tired of hearing about it, talking about it. I am too, to be quite frank. It definitely happened. I think what I'm mostly frustrated with is the fact that there are people out there right now on the left now saying that this whole assassination was a hoax, that Trump never even got hit in the ear, and it was all, this Band-Aid he's wearing is all a joke to bring sympathy to him, and they're even saying that he staged the whole thing. Wow, what nonsense. It's just crazy to me to think that people want to go there to take the responsibility away from the deep state, from the people that do not want President Trump, former President Trump, being the president of the United States. It's just insanity. Nonetheless, it happened. You guys have read all the articles. I'm sure you've seen all the news outlets talk about how the Secret Service did not do their job. We know that the director of the Secret Service has finally stepped down, as she should. She was a DEI agent, so to speak, where she was all about diversity, exclusion, and inclusion. I don't know. All this stuff just really frustrates me and really just gets my mind wandering, and it's been a really weird 2 weeks for me since I've been on here. The last show I had my team do while I was out of town, but since all this has been going on, man, I have been in a whirlwind just listening to all the crazy stuff that's going on, and we know that this November is going to be a little bit crazy with the election. We know that the media is going to spin things left and right. We know that these news outlets, these influencers, the propaganda that's going to be out there on both sides, I'm not just talking about on the left, but it's going to do the same thing on the right, is going to get all of us stirred up talking. There's a lot of clickbait going on. And we just need to be aware of all the things that are happening right now. And we need to seek for the truth. And that can be hard to do. Because how do we know what's true? How do we know what news site to listen to? How do we know what article is actually speaking the truth? Well, I have to say that is a very difficult question to answer. And of course, I don't listen. I don't try to follow just particular news sources. I try to listen to multiple ones that have credibility, that have a history, that can be respected for telling the truth, where they're not spinning a lot of things. They're just giving you the facts and letting you deal with it. That's normally what I try to do. I try to wait a couple weeks before I actually form my opinion about different things that are going on, because we never get all of the information in the very beginning. So there's just a lot of things that I look towards on top of seeking the Lord for direction and wisdom and really just common sense. I think a lot of times if we just use common sense, we can figure out the answers to a lot of things in life, when it comes to morality, when it comes to our freedom, when it comes to the things that we stand for. So this whole assassination attempt, I believe it was truly a God moment in our country, that in that millisecond of time when former President Trump turned his head, that was the moment that God spared his life. And I do believe that there was a spiritual awakening in that man. There had to be. I mean, when you come that close to an encounter of death, usually a spiritual awakening happens. Usually you're looking at life saying there really is a God, because something traumatic just about happened to you. That doesn't mean that he's changed completely. It doesn't mean that, all of a sudden he's just going to be the nicest guy in the world. I'm not saying all that. I'm just saying, though, that there definitely was something pretty crazy that happened to him. You could see it in his demeanor, whether that was just luck for some of you or whether it was a miracle, which is what I believe. I don't know. But to me, it was a miracle that took place. And then I look at his life. I look at his kids. I look at everything that transpired after that. I looked at the RNC that happened that week or the next week after the attempted assassination, how energizing that was, and how the people were unifying, at least in the Republican committee, how they felt very unified and energetic and passionate about what they were talking about. It was definitely really, really cool to see. Oh, I didn't agree with 100% of everything, all right? And I want to make this, because I've had people ask me, how can I support a guy like President Trump? If I'm supposed to be a Christ follower, if I'm supposed to follow Jesus, who was perfect, by the way, how can I support somebody like President Trump who has had the past that he's had? And that's not an easy answer. It's not an easy answer to explain to people that don't understand the Bible, don't understand grace and forgiveness, don't understand that your past is not your future. There's a lot of things that go into this. I think about my own life. I mean, everybody wants to look at President Trump as he's this bad guy, and he's had this horrible past. And how in the world could anybody support this guy who's had this horrible past when it comes to women, and when it comes to paying women to sleep with them, when it comes to lying or cheating or stealing on his taxes or in his businesses, all the indictments, all this fraudulent stuff supposedly that he's done. How in the world could I support a candidate like that? Well, it's real simple. People change. I mean, I look at my life. I'm a pastor. But if you go back at the beginning of my life when I was just right out of high school, I wasn't the best person in the world. I mean, if we're going to be talking about people's problems, we're going to be talking about sin. I was living in sin. I mean, I was dating my girlfriend. We ended up having sex before we got married. We got pregnant. That's not godly. That's not biblical. That's not being like Jesus. We made a mistake. But here we are today, 28 years later, still married, 3 children, 2 grandchildren. My life has changed. I'm now a pastor. A lot of people would say, well, how can he ever be a pastor with the way he grew up and all the drinking he did when he was a teenager and all the sin that he committed? Well, none of us are perfect. As a matter of fact, none of us are even good people. The Bible even says not one is good. And so I just look at it that people change. My life has changed. I'm not the same person I was 28 years ago. And I don't believe President Trump is the same person that he was back in those days when a lot of those things went down. And yes, he used to be a Democrat. Absolutely. He voted and supported a lot of the things that I didn't agree with at the time. But because he's changed his views, he's changed his politics. That's how I can do that. When it comes to voting for people, I'll talk about this a little bit more the closer we get to the election, but I'll give you a short clip of this. When it comes to voting for the best candidate as a Christian, you have to take the top 5 or the top 7 things that you're looking for in a candidate that supports your belief system. There's no candidate out there. There will never be a candidate out there that is going to fit the bill perfectly. There's no way it's going to happen. There's no one that good that is going to fit that picture perfect for you to pick the best candidate. You have to take the top 5 or 7 moral, ethical, biblical things that you stand behind, and you have to see if they support those things. And if they support those things, then that is the candidate that you should vote for, whoever that candidate is. Now, hopefully you have some moral values. Hopefully you have some common sense when it comes to the freedom in which we're supposed to be protected by the government. That's the whole point of the Constitution, is to protect us from the government. The government is supposed to uphold the Constitution, not have more power given to them to make more laws and more rules that is nonsense or doesn't fit the narrative for themselves. That's kind of where I'm at with all this. Now, you look at this current situation with Biden dropping out, and all of a sudden he endorses the vice president. There's been no election whatsoever in a primary to pick Kamala Harris. So the people, the Democrats specifically, did not get a voice in picking their future president. They're going now off of what the establishment has wanted from day one. And there are many organizations that do not support this. One organization that I am not even a fan of at all. I don't care for this organization at all. They're a Marxist, hateful organization, and that is Black Lives Matter. But here is what Black Lives Matter had to say about all the events that is coming up. On Sunday, Joe Biden drops out. Kamala Harris announces her campaign with Biden endorsement. Kamala Harris says she is going to work hard to earn the nomination. She hasn't done jack to earn the nomination, by the way. All she did was call the delegates, call her party up to say, hey, are you going to support me or not? She hasn't done anything to earn this. Kamala Harris, well, that's what they even say. She makes calls to the party delegates. On Monday, Kamala Harris continues making those calls to the party delegates because she only had half of the support, so she needs more support. Kamala Harris now makes 2 public speeches since then. The Associated Press announced that Kamala Harris has secured enough delegates to be the Democratic nominee. That happened on Monday night. Kamala Harris releases the statement noting that she has worked hard to go out and earn this nomination as promised on Monday night. She hasn't gone out and done anything to earn the nomination. It was given to her. It was handed to her. And as a matter of fact, this has all been in the plan from the very beginning. A 24-hour process of talking to the party bosses is not democratic, nor is it a process that Democrats should be proud of. This is the Black Lives Matter movement. This is what they're saying. We do not live in a dictatorship. Delegates are not supposed to be given in the way that they were given. Installing Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee and an unknown vice president without any public voting process would make the modern Democratic Party a party of hypocrites. This is an organization that fully supports the Democratic Party. And right now, they do not support what is going on. And they call on the DNC to create a process that allows the public participation in the nomination process, not just a nomination by the party delegates. I don't think that is the right process that has taken place. Now, we don't even know how this is all going to play out. Supposedly, she's picked some vice president right now, the senator out of Pennsylvania. I don't know. Nobody really knows if that's going to be the case. But let's just give you a little tidbit how Biden finally comes out and says, hey, this is the future of America. We need to unify, and we need to get the young people involved, that Kamala Harris is the person to do that. Well, let's take a look at her record for just a moment. Let's not be duped by the fact that she's black and Asian and a woman. Those are three things that would probably go in her favor, because in America, everybody wants a woman president. I don't know why. I don't understand why. Like, I'm not saying I'm 100% against it, but I'm definitely not 100% for it. From my belief system, I have a little bit different belief system. But yet, not only do we want a woman president, but now we want a woman black president or an Asian president. And so now everybody's just going to vote for her just for that to happen. Nobody's looking at her record. They're not looking at what she's done or hasn't done for our country. They only want a black woman president, and that's why they're going to vote for her. But let's look at her. Let's look at a little bit of her record. Kamala Harris actually says she runs off of freedom. But the truth is, she is always and has been anti-freedom. She has a tyrannical behavior throughout her entire career, and it's downright cruel what she actually stands for and what she has voted for. As the Attorney General of California, she actually ordered authorities to raid the home of a pro-life journalist. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but his name is David. And he uncovered some corruption in Planned Parenthood. Well, Kamala Harris is all about Planned Parenthood. As a matter of fact, she sponsored the Reproductive Fact Act, which required pro-life pregnancy centers to advertise for abortion. If you want to know the truth, this law is actually unconstitutional. She has lobbied for the LGBTQ movement. She has lobbied for radical environmentalists. She won't hesitate to trample on our constitutional rights to please all of these entities that go completely against, at least for us religious people, what we believe. The Supreme Court won't be able to stand in her way because she supports the Democrats' radical plan to expand and pack the court with liberal judges. That's her goal. Kamala has a personal belief system that the Constitution or even in her own ideology is compelled to only be by her power. That's what she wants. She wants power. She wants power over you. She wants power over your children, over your ability to speak, worship, and work as you see fit. Her record is absolutely crystal clear. She is an advocate of the Equality Act, which would actually diminish the religious liberty and free speech rights of our churches and our religious institutions who hold to a natural definition of marriage and gender. She doesn't want any of that. She's all about all the different genders, whatever fits your feelings, she's all about putting in place. She supports the right of the state to take minors away from their parents because they refuse to know about, because they're confused about their own gender. I mean, Gavin Newsom just put it in law that in the state of California, that in the public school system, that they do not have to let parents know that their children are starting to transition or have any kind of issues when it comes to their gender. She even wants to ban fracking, which would bring thousands and thousands of families as well as an American whole to an economic ruin. This is just a tip of the iceberg of what Kamala Harris is all about. She is not good for our country. She's not good for it. This is some unprecedented times that we are seeing it currently. And what I'm asking you to do is I'm just asking you to research your information. Don't just go vote for somebody because you've always voted for the Democratic Party. A lot of people will say, "Oh, well, you're just a Republican." No, I'm not. I'm not a Republican at all. I'm actually a conservative Christian. That's what I am. Now, right now, the Republican Party stands on those values more than any other party, and that's why I would say that I'm voting for a Republican person, but that is not who I am. I am a conservative Christian that votes on the values of what the Bible says. I use a biblical worldview to vote with, to make my decisions, to do life with. I don't look at the world. I look at the Bible to make those decisions. That's what I do. And it's not easy today because there's so much evil out there and there's so many different opinions. Like, for instance, let's just take what's going on just the last couple of days in D.C. with Hamas and the Palestinians right now. How in the world in our country is it okay for a group of people, a group of haters, Jew haters, how can a group of people go to a public space in Washington, D.C., rip down the American flag and put up a Palestinian flag and then burn that flag and not be arrested? How in the world does our government think that these people are exercising their freedom of speech through doing something destructive like that? There's no way any human being can think that this is okay. If we were to be in any other country and do this, we would be arrested and most likely killed. Why in the world are we not arresting these people and deporting them back to their country? If they hate this country so much, why are they even here? I get why America is here, because they want the freedom to come to this country to live the way they do. But this is domestic terrorism is what this is. This is pure hate on another group of people. I don't understand why we're allowing it. It doesn't make sense to me. I would arrest every single one of them and I'd take them back to their country. Never allow them back here again. Kamala Harris is wide open borders. She's the queen of open borders. It's her plan that Joe Biden is going by for the borders. And then we wonder why we have all the crime and all the problems in our country. And it's only going to get worse. All of it's going to get worse. Then you might say, well, what does all this have to do with church and religion? It doesn't right now. It's a spiritual battle we're in. But it is something we got to talk about. It's something that we need to be made aware of so we can fight for our freedom, fight for the things that we believe in, and making sure we're trying to get the truth out there to the American people. Now, I believe that most of you watching this podcast, most of you, agree with everything that I'm saying, or at least the majority of it. But I know there are some of you out there that are watching this that do not agree, but you're watching it anyway because there's something inside of you that knows what I'm saying is true. Or you just want to argue, I don't know. But there are people out there watching this right now that do not agree, because I've had some of you message me. You comment on my stuff. I've always wondered why people follow me if you don't agree. Or why do you follow me if you are hateful about it? Doesn't make sense. Just scroll on. Go find a group of people that you can follow that you support. That's what I do. I mean, I look at people's stuff, and I look at people's stuff that I don't agree with, but I don't go on there and comment on there to put my beliefs on their page. That's their right. That's their belief. So be it. I've got my page to vote, to put my stuff out there of what I want to believe in. That's just the way I feel like that's the way it should work. Either way, we've got a lot coming up. We got a big election ahead of us. I'm sure it's only going to get a little bit, well, I shouldn't say a little bit. It's going to get a lot worse with the attack ads. And I just want to say I'm not really for that. I'm not for, I don't know. I think there's time and place for it, no doubt. But I think if it was me, I would just try to share my truth of what I'm standing for. I think I would try to share the truth of what the other party's standing for, so there's no confusion, there's no lies going on. But this whole thing right now with Biden dropping out and Kamala coming in, something weird about it. Something doesn't seem right. Something's off. And we don't even know if this is going to be, I mean, a lot of people believe that she's the one. They're the ones that the party's going to get behind, and she's raised all of this money. I mean, $250 million in 4 days? Come on, people. Do you believe that? Do you literally believe that she raised that kind of money? No, she didn't raise that kind of money. This has been planned. This money's been sitting somewhere for this moment that's coming in through illegal ways. Probably from the Ukraine money. Who knows? Some of this stuff is just common sense to me, that when it's like this, you have to question it. And if you really want to know the truth, you always follow the money. Always follow the money. It'll give you the truth every single time of where people are. Jeesh. Well, I don't want to talk about politics the whole time. I don't think it would end well on this podcast if that's all we ever did was talk about politics. But let me give you some good news, or let me give you something challenging that I've been wrestling with. So I'm actually reading a book right now called Deep Changes, and it's a pretty challenging book, actually. It's actually talking about how do we know real change actually happens? Because people can change their behaviors, but their heart never changes. So the change on the outward doesn't last. And now, as a pastor, I see that a lot. People come into church, they change. You start seeing the outward appearance change. And the next thing you know, 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years, all of a sudden those people go right back to their old selves. You got to wonder why. Well, it comes down to their motives, the motives of their heart. The question is, has their heart really changed? Because the heart change is what starts on the inside and works to the outward appearance. And then it holds because the heart is what everything comes from. The Bible says everything flows from the heart. So you can make behavioral changes, but if your heart's the same, the behavioral changes are never going to last. I don't know. It's a challenging book. It's a very challenging book. It talks about our desires, the desires that we have. You know, I know a lot of people that are always praying for their desires to go away. But God doesn't just take your desire away. That's not how that works. I think the more you desire to serve the Lord, the more the bad desire goes away. That's what I believe. But it's this choice that we have to make. You and I have to make a choice whether or not we want to do the things that we're doing. Everybody does what they want to do. And if you want real life change, then you'll begin to do the things that you have to do for your heart to change. If you want change in your behaviors, then you'll take the action steps to change the behaviors. It's up to us. We're in total control of it. Everything we do, we are in control of. The good part is we got the Holy Spirit that gives us the strength to do the things that we cannot do. There's certain things that we can't do by ourselves. We need God in our life. We need God to help us have the power to be able to overcome the things that we struggle with every single day. And I was talking with somebody the other day about this, and I was just telling them that I gave them the analogy of like this computer, for instance. I'll just give it to you. If I fully charge this computer and it's given to me, I can use this computer for a couple of days, depending on how much I'm on it. I could use it for a couple of days. But eventually, the battery is going to go dead. And then when the battery goes dead, I can no longer use the computer in the way it was intended to be used. So what do I have to do? I have to plug the computer into a source to charge it back up so it can be used. Well, this computer is like us. If we're not being plugged into the source, which is Jesus Christ, every couple of days, I mean, I'd recommend you do it every day, but every couple of days at the very least, then you are going to die spiritually. You will not have the energy to keep going in life to do the things that God has called us to do, which is forgive people, love people, to stay away from pornography, to not lie or cheat or steal, not to get angry. I mean, I think about when I'm not plugged into the source, when I'm not talking to God in prayer and reading my word, my wife, my kids, the staff, the people around me, my friends, they can sense a difference in me. They can see that I'm kind of going backwards. I get easily frustrated. Maybe I lash out. Maybe I'm just not as nice of a person. It could be a bunch of things. They know it's because I'm not plugged in. I think it's important for you to ask yourself that question. Can people tell the difference between you when you're not plugged into the source? Or are you just the same person all the time? I think it's a good question to ask yourself. All I know is I'm here to try to encourage people in many different facets. I'm very passionate about government. I'm very passionate about freedom. And I'm very grateful for this country that we live in. I want to protect it. I want to steward it well. I'm very passionate about the sanctity of marriage. I'm very passionate about the sanctity of life, which, again, Kamala Harris is against a life. She wants pro-choice. I want pro-life. I want babies to be alive. I don't want to murder them. They don't get the choice to decide whether they live or die, which is very sad in many cases. I'm for the freedom of speech. I'm so tired of people getting butthurt and offended. I'm for one man, one woman. I'm for a male or a female. I mean, here's the thing I think of. Everybody wants to vote for Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party, and yet this is the party that can't even define a woman. But yet they say she's a woman. How do we know if she's really a woman? I mean, according to the Democratic Party. I mean, they're so confused when it comes to gender. How do we know? I mean, they're saying she's going to be the first woman president, but if they can't even define what a woman is, how do they know? That's the craziness that's going on. It's like hypocritical. Out of one side of your mouth, you're saying one thing. Out of the other side of your mouth, you're saying something else just to win votes. Just to win the people over to get votes. I'm not here to get votes. I'm not here for you to like me. I'm not here for you to agree with me. I'm here to speak the truth in the best way that I can with the knowledge that I have. So I hope you come back on this podcast. Next week, well, it won't be next week. It'll be the week after. I'm doing my podcast 2 times a month, okay? Every other week, I will do this podcast, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things. And next week, I'm actually going to bring a spiritual message to all of you, something that I think can help you in your life, biblically speaking. It's going to be like a little teaching for you so you can learn from the things that I've learned from, or maybe just learn from the Bible, whichever way you want to take that. And then later on in the year, when we get closer to the election, we'll be talking more about that stuff. So come back. Don't forget, hit subscribe. And I love you guys. Hope to see you next time. We'll see you later.